Windsor Town Council meeting for June 1st, 2022. If everyone would rise with me and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our meetings are by an agenda. We are recording our meetings. Anyone wishing to have something placed on the agenda should have had it to the town hall by the previous Wednesday by 3 o'clock. Anyone wishing to speak tonight, we ask you to sign up here unless you're already on the agenda. Approval of the minutes from the May 4th, 2022 Town Council meeting. Dana has sent them out to everyone, made them available to everyone. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes for the May 4th Town Council meeting.
I second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the May 4th, 2022 Town Council meeting. Any questions or comments? All those signify by saying aye and raise your hand.
Aye. Aye.
So carried. At this time, we're going to kind of go out of order a little bit. Introduce Kent Martin, the plant manager at Lehigh Cement Company in Union Bridge. He's here with some friends from the Hanson Aggregates, Pennsylvania, presentation of the Union Bridge project. Kent?
Okay, do I just stand up here? Or?
Get close to a mic if possible.
That should be good, yeah.
I don't know if I want that, but okay. So, Mayor, thank you very much for the opportunity to bring in some of my colleagues here tonight to present a business opportunity that is being investigated by Hanson Aggregates. My role tonight is to introduce this group. I did want to kind of explain a little bit the organizational structure of Lehigh Hanson in North America. Heidelberg Cement in North America is known as Lehigh Hanson, and we're split up into different regions in North America. We're a part of the Northeast region, and we have different business lines. So the cement business, which is what Lehigh Cement's plant is a part of, reports up to a vice president of operations, whom reports up to a region president for the Northeast region. We also have a business line, which is materials, and that materials business line reports up through a different leadership structure to the vice president and general manager of Hanson Aggregates, which is Mark Hendrick, who's here today. And so I think it's important. So even though the quarry is going to be located at Union Bridge, what we are looking at is an aggregate business at the plant, at the quarry at Union Bridge. The business will not report up through me. I will not be a part of that business, but we will have different leadership responsible for that business and the business result. The other thing I wanted to mention is that historically we have really valued community outreach and being out in front of items to communicate to the community, business leaders, to politicians. And so we've decided, the team has decided to pursue first through the town council meetings here at New Windsor. Later this month, they will be presenting in front of Union Bridge Town Council. We have historically also had town community council meetings at the plant. And we have not, I would say that COVID really put a monkey wrench into those tools that we've used to reach out to the community. We are going to be scheduling community council meetings in September. It will be for the Union Bridge plant, but we will reserve a slot for Hanson Aggregates to come in and give updates, with the business developments that are being investigated by this team. So what I'd like to do is to introduce the team, starting off with Mark Hendrick. He is the Vice President and General Manager of Hanson Aggregates. Mike Lewis is the Northeast Region Environmental Director. Andrew Gutschall.
We're going to go through and get all mom's flip-flop.
Andrew Gutschall is the Environmental Manager. And then we have also Joe, and I never say it right.
Collegero,
who is a consultant working for the traffic group. So I'm going to turn the presentation over to these gentlemen, and they're going to walk you through what we're looking at, what Lehigh, or what Hanson Aggregates is looking at in the Union Bridge Quarry. Welcome.
Who's in control of the slide? Okay. Should I just tell you?
Yeah,
You can go ahead. The first slide actually, Kent introduced us. So I'm Mike Lewis, the Northeast Region Environmental Director for Hanson, Lehigh Hanson, and you'll meet some of the other players. So you can go to the next slide. So just I'm going to try to give you guys a high level summary of kind of what we're considering, what we're working on. As Kent mentioned, at the former cement quarry at Union Bridge. So we'll talk about who we are, kind of the reasons we're doing what we're looking to do, an overview of the project itself, and then some environmental considerations, permits, and then lastly, we'll have Joe talk a little bit about the traffic study they did. And then if anybody has any questions, we're here to answer them. That's kind of the point of this is, we're in the preliminary stages working on the permitting aspect of it and the feasibility, and kind of wanted to get out in front of it and just, give you guys a summary before we start, submitting applications. So, next slide. So who is Hanson Aggregates, Pennsylvania? Kent gave a pretty good kind of overview of how the structure is. They are multiple businesses within Lehigh Hanson, but Lehigh Cement Company, as you guys all are familiar with, was founded in 1897 in Allentown, PA, and then in 1977 Lehigh was acquired by Heidelberg Cement, which owns the company that we all work for, Lehigh Hanson. So in the 60s, Hanson Trust was formed and created the entities that we are today. And then it emerged into 4 separate areas, one of which is Hanson. Hanson Aggregates is who we represent. And we're, like Ken said, are the materials side. Just moving along the timeline, 2008, Lehigh Cement and Hanson PLC were integrated into one company, forming Lehigh Hanson, which is the parent company that we both work for, both of our separate businesses work for today. And then I think I hopefully painted a decent picture of that, but we are a separate company, like Kent said. Everything for this proposed operation would go report up through Mark Kendrick, the VP, who reports up to a president. And I can tell you, I've been in the materials business for Hanson for close to 15 years, and I didn't set foot in a cement plant or a cement terminal until I took this regional position. So the materials business is definitely separate from the cement business. So just Hanson Aggregates, Pennsylvania. We have Hanson Aggregates, New York, up north of there, but as you can see, the circled area, that's kind of where we operate. We have concrete plants, which uses cement, hot mix asphalt plants, and quarries. And a lot of those quarries have hot mix asphalt plants at them. So that's kind of the lay of the land, but as you see there, we don't have any aggregate quarries in Maryland. So that's kind of what we're looking to do. Yeah. So Ken touched on it a little bit, but that quarry that's there now was there for the cement plant, and I'm not even going to pretend I know all the chemical properties of the stone and everything, but that stone that was at the quarry was specifically needed by the cement plant, and I think everybody knows the story there, but the cement grade stone was mined out by the cement plant, which is why they have the quarry now in New Windsor. But there's quite a bit of what we call construction aggregates, so for roads and sub-base and building materials, there's quite a bit of construction grade stone there, which is kind of our business. So that's kind of why we're looking at it. We're doing a very similar thing up at the cement plant that we own in Nazareth, Pennsylvania, where the cement grade stone was mined out, and we're essentially doing what we're talking about tonight, running an aggregates quarry there. So obviously, it's better to utilize the resources that are there, use them all up instead of leaving the construction aggregates at the Union Bridge Quarry and opening up what we call a green field, makes sense to utilize, you know, a quarry that's already there. Probably won't go through all this, but just a little bit about mining and construction aggregates. We would love to put a quarry out in the middle of nowhere where there's nobody, we're not going to disturb anybody, but we have to mine where the kind of nature has put the stone and the materials, and that they're at the, you know, close to the surface where we can get at them and it's economically, you know, feasible to do, and they're not. There's no substitute for these materials. And just skip down to the bottom there. If you didn't know kind of how things are, what things are consist of, concrete is almost at least 80% aggregates, and then hot mix asphalt or blacktop is almost all aggregates, 92 to 95%. And just a little perspective, 38,000 tons of aggregates in every mile of a highway. And then each person uses about 11 tons of aggregates per year, or 1.3 million pounds in a lifetime. So that's kind of what we're talking about, is supplying those needs. So the project location, yeah, obviously the quarry's in Union Bridge, so I'm not sure, you know, everybody knows the lay of the land, but we're basically going to kind of reuse the southern portion of that quarry to start. With an entrance on Clemsonville Road. It's a little hard to see for customers that will need some improvements, you know, to be able to handle the customer trucks. But the bulk of the quarrying operation will be down kind of where that yellow blow-up circle is highlighting. So what we're going to do is use a portable plant very similar to what you see here, probably 2 more of those to make different sizes of stone, but those, you know, what they say, portable plants, not fixed. There's no construction or pads that they need to go on. We can move them around the site or move them in and out as needed. So we don't have any plans to put in a, you know, major plant to, you know, as a fixed plant. Just as a typical aggregate quarry has a scale house and a scale, which is, you see that truck driving over in the middle picture, and then very similar to what was done prior to them shutting down the Union Bridge quarry, haul trucks and loaders to, you know, move stone to the plant, the processing plant within the quarry. So no real major buildings or anything, just a scale and a you know, essentially a trailer. So just a comparison of the old cement quarry, 2 shifts pretty much, you know, Monday through Friday. So, you know, roughly 18 hours or so. And then for the aggregates quarry, we usually run 1 shift, so roughly 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday, and you know, 6 to 1 on Saturday if needed, which was kind of similar to the cement quarry. Just a little bit perspective too. Cement quarry used to produce 3 to 3.5 million tons per year to supply the cement plant. For the aggregates quarry, we're looking at, especially to start, under a 500,000 tons, but somewhere in the 500,000 to 750,000 tons per year. Going to turn it over to Andrew Gutschall. Andrew Gutschall is the environmental manager that works for Mark Kendrick. Just like Kent Martin has an environmental manager that works right at the plant, he would be the main kind of environmental representative for the aggregate operations. So I'll turn it over to Andrew.
Evening, everybody. Yeah, I take care of the permitting and stuff for all of our quarries in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. So yeah, as Mike was saying, really the proposed activity there is nothing new than what's been at the quarry before. It's going to be quarried in the same way, drilling, blasting, hauling the material to a processing area. The only new thing probably would be the customer entrance, as you were talking about on Clemsonville Road. So those improvements would have to be done there. Anticipate less production, like you were just mentioning, so that's also a change. Air permits, we would have to go through the MDE to get a separate air permit for our facility, for the equipment that would have to be there. And we have had talks with them already, so that's be a minor source. Likely, to speaking to the mining people, we would stay under the same mining permit that's already there. We would just have to get a mining license from the state, which is a simple application. Plan to use the same water, well, the water source there is the water that collects in the quarry pit. If we need to use water for dust suppression or wetting the roads down, stuff like that, we would just get the water out of there. So there's really no change in that. We would have to go to Frederick County to get our driveway permit, site plan approval for the improvements that we need to do there. And I believe we also need to get a water appropriations permit for if we need to use that for anything else. So really the only thing left to discuss, I think, is Joe's going to talk about traffic. We have done a small study on that already.
Thanks. Good evening, everyone. Joe Colagero, Vice President with the Traffic Group. We're based out of Baltimore, Maryland. I personally have worked on a lot of projects in Frederick County, in Carroll County, and actually worked with Lehigh back in 2009 up until 2016, working on the other projects. But what we did for this facility is, these aren't typical facilities, so we looked at their existing operations at two plants, one in Milton, one in Curtis Gap in Pennsylvania. This, we're projecting to have similar operations. Their typical peak traffic flow is going to be between 6 a.m. and 11 a.m. There will be other traffic flow throughout the day. You know, as mentioned previously, they'll be open from 6 to 4 during the weekend. Most people are really concerned about peak hours. What's going to happen when I'm going to and from work, dropping the kids off at school, so on and so forth. But for what's nice about this plant or this quarry is that their anticipated peak truck trips are going to be during the summertime, when the traffic typically is a little bit lower, especially during peak hours with vacation, school vacation, and so forth. So what we did was we conducted what we call a trip generation study, and that determines the peak hours. So looking at the peak hours between Milton and Curtis Gap, and I know there's a lot of information here, but I just want to get down to the end results, and if there's questions, I can walk you through how we got to these numbers. But as you see in the bottom in red, we're projecting 32 morning peak hour trips, which would be generally between 7 and 8 a.m. Now, a trip is one trip in, a second trip is one trip out. So it's not 64 trips, it's 32 trips. So we can assume 16 trips in, 16 trips out during the peak hours. Now, typically in the peak hour in the evening, we're looking at 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Well, the plant is typically not open during those times, so we calculated that the peak hours would be 27 trips. Again, that would be either 13 or 14 in, 13 or 14 out, and that occurred between 1 and 2, so just after lunchtime. So what we have to do with this information, we prepared a letter, we submitted it to Frederick County under a process. It's a notice of intent to develop. So Frederick County reviews this information, and they look at it with their adequate public facilities ordinance to make sure that the roads will be adequate for this type of facility as well as other types of developments. And since this development generates less than 50 peak hour trips, the county determined it to be exempt from further testing. So we basically have met the approvals to move forward in Frederick County with respect to traffic. Now, what we also did was we tried to do our best estimate of where we think people will come and pull these aggregates. So we're assuming a 70% distribution into the Washington, D.C., Baltimore metro area and further to what I'll call the south and the east. Some could get projected to the eastern shore. It's just a matter of where people are going to buy this material. I mean, it's hard to project at this time, but we did our best estimates while talking with Hanson as well. We're projecting 5% to head to Virginia or the Brunswick area. And then what we did was we assumed a general 25% heading to the northwest. There's different routes that the group, that these trucks could carry this material. They would all be individual users, so it's hard to police said users, so they would be following like I did today, is click on my Waze and they would tell me the best way to go. So that is my presentation. I think that closes it out until someone else, or and so we're all here for questions. Thank you so much for your time. It's greatly appreciated. We're very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, any questions?
So I'm Kevin Cornick. Question is, you mentioned that this material is near the surface. You may have touched on it, but can you explain how you actually mine this material, and will there be blasting at all?
So, yeah, and the material that we're looking at is essentially exposed already in the quarry faces.
Okay.
I would think at that area in the quarry, the south end of that, there might be 6 benches. So a typical bench is a 50-foot high wall. It's like stair step going down into the ground. So yeah, there is blasting. There's drilling and blasting. It's regulated by the state of Maryland and industry standards. So it's what has been done there in the past. And I think if you can imagine, we're talking about doing a 1/6 of what was done in the past for production annually at the plant. The blasting and drilling will be about the same thing. It'll be reduced by that same amount. So, but yeah, all the blasting is regulated by the state. I'm sure the inspectors come in a couple times a year to check everything out. And there's always a seismic draft put out for every blast that we give to closest residents. This has been done, and I'm sure it's done over here in New Windsor as well.
That's kind of why we're looking at that area, is there's not a lot of earth that needs to be removed from the
Right.
rock, so that's advantageous. You don't have to clear a lot of overburden off the rock.
And the blasting will be within the same, I guess, the same restrictions or guidelines of the previous operations?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Okay. In those times, I live far enough away, but in town that I don't really hear it or feel it, well, a couple times, but they'll be within a certain time frame as well? Or similar time frame?
Typically, at our sites in Pennsylvania, which I'm sure this is the way it's going to be done, but, so blasting has to be done at daylight hours.
Sure.
And it's usually, they get to the site early in the morning, they load the holes with the explosives, tie everything together, make sure it's all done right, and blasting usually happens like 11 a.m.
Okay.
Something like that. There could be delays because of weather, but typically, it's done at midday.
Now, what Kent and the folks at New Windsor plant, we get text messages if we want between 11 and 2 blasting. Would you be open to doing that, working with either Kent or separately to notify people, let them sign up?
I don't think that's a problem.
Yeah, we do that quite frequently at just about all of our quarries. We probably wouldn't be through Kent. It'd be through
Yeah,
us,
so some places in Pennsylvania, we have like a call them all system.
Yeah.
Where it just sends a message out to whatever. But yeah, text message, I actually know some places use Facebook to do it, believe it or not. But.
And I think I know the answer to this one anyway. However, we have our fire chief here in New Windsor, and he works very closely with Union Bridge and Chief Green. And if there's opportunities for training, I would think you would be open to that, Byron, if you want to address that. But, if there's training, for EMS, rescue, that sort of thing, they would be more than willing to come in and train.
We've always had a good relationship with Lehigh as far as that, go way back, so. But yeah, my one question I have for you call it mining, but it's not really mining, right? It's just quarrying.
Correct.
You're not going to be, I work near a quarry that had a mine in it at one point. And so that's why I asked when you use the term mining, whether or not you're mining or just quarrying.
So mining, you mean underground?
Yeah, they actually tunneled
No
inside of
tunnel,
the quarry wall and went back.
Correct, this is
Surface
surface mining.
mining.
Surface mining, yeah.
So,
Dale?
This is similar to the quarry we have at Bedford and the one in Nicor. It's just basically a rock quarry.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Sharon's got one.
Yep. Sharon?
Well, you were showing us a chart that had how many trips were the average from two other quarries, and I'm just wondering how that compares to the number of trips that were made from the Union Bridge quarry up till now. Will it be more trips or less trips on the roads?
From when the Union Bridge quarry was active?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the trips, so I guess.
Oh, I
want me to
see.
take that? Yeah,
So-
the quarrying and the mining that was done previous at the Union Bridge facility was solely for the purpose of the cement plant.
Okay.
So there was no over-the-road truck traffic with crushed aggregate in it.
Okay, so this is going to put a lot more traffic on the road than's ever been on that road, is that correct?
It's going to be more, yes. I wouldn't characterize it as a lot, but, I mean, I think the trips that Joe showed, it's not, it's 17 trucks at the peak hour, is that what it was? Yeah. Or 16. 16 in the peak hour of the morning. So, yeah, it is more because the crushed aggregate has never left that site in a triaxle dump truck.
That really is the main difference. I mean, everything that the cement quarry did, we're gonna do in a smaller fashion, but we will have customers, whereas they were just their own internal customers, so they didn't, not a lot of over-the-road, transport.
So that actually goes to my question too. Is you mentioned that there was the Frederick County traffic study. Is there a Carroll County traffic study, or did they just tie off the same?
It's typically where you access the roads. So we access
Because it's
in
Frederick County.
So Frederick County holds jurisdiction.
Okay.
It's going to be Hanson trucks or subcontracted trucks?
No, so the way we operate, we don't have our own trucking fleet. Yeah, so it's customers, so, anybody that has a triaxle dump truck that needs rock. Yeah, and then, come and get it. Yeah, there's an insurance qualifications, that kind of stuff, yeah, obviously.
Dave?
Yeah, so I'm Dave Hoffman. You mentioned that your crusher is considered a portable crusher. The decibel level of that, is it louder, than?
I don't know what the decibel is for the crusher that's there, but it's gonna be substantially lower than what's ever been there before. We haven't been asked to do a noise study, but I don't know that's in the regulation. It's gonna be less than what was there, for sure.
Oh, Peggy.
What about air quality? Is it tested at the site and further out?
Yeah, so the air quality, the consideration there is dust usually. And also, for the portable plants are run with diesel engines. So we have to get a permit from the state of Maryland and have to go through that process and give them all the specifics on each piece of equipment. So that all gets handled through the state of Maryland. Dust, essentially there's a very minimal amount of dust we call fugitive dust that is allowed from a piece of equipment like that.
Is there protection for the workers?
Yeah. I mean, essentially what we use is water. So the engineering control is dust, for dust is water. You have water sprays like misters, and that knocks the dust down. Some of the plant actually might be what we call a wet plant, so we might be washing the aggregate so that it doesn't have dust on it. Ready mix concrete and some hot mix asphalt, when they make that, they don't want any dust on the material, so you have to wash that stuff off. If you're making a wet product, it's inherently not going to be dusting at all either. So, and then we wet down any of the roads with a water truck, so that keeps all the dust down as well.
But essentially it stays localized? I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't.
Well, if it leaves the property, we're going to have a problem.
Okay.
Again, it's nothing, we're not doing anything different than was done for the last, 100 years. We're doing it just at a lesser scale, so something we do all over the Northeast.
So you have another question?
Yeah, I kind of was going to extend off of what the lady's question was about the dust in terms of, and you kind of answered it, but, since they're using various avenues to leave the facility, we're talking about, dust that will be maybe on the tires of the trucks that leave. I mean, obviously, we'd like to keep that at a minimum because we don't want dusty roads throughout the town so will there be measures taken to make sure that the trucks that are leaving with clean clean, I'm using air quotes, clean wheels.
The term that we use in the industry is track out.
Yeah.
So that's, and we look to avoid that. Typically an entrance, which we haven't designed it yet, I'm not sure what the specifications are for Frederick County or not, but typically there's an apron, a paved area coming into the site as well.
Right.
That and a scrubber pad, which would be like large #3 rocks. That's typical on any construction site. When truck goes to leave a site, has to go through that, and it knocks the big stuff out of the tires. So we're certainly going to have that. And other locations, Kent, do you have a street sweeper that runs around in the plant? I mean, that's something that we might have to put in there too. You know, it comes out a couple times a day to run at the entrance if needed.
Okay.
I have a question in that, you know, I live on Main Street and truck traffic has always been a problem, and we've had this bypass put in, and same thing with Church Street. A lot of these trucks really kind of ignore the bypass. Is it possible that as your trucks are leaving, if they're coming through New Windsor, that they be aware that there is a bypass, that they need to honor that bypass? I mean, it sounds like something silly, but it's not
No,
when it's your
not.
house there.
We can certainly understand that. And it's something we can, unfortunately, all we can do is suggest it, right? And
Right, but if you can make them aware of that, you know, some of them say, well, it's not on the Google map correctly, and, you know, so a lot of these drivers say, well, we couldn't see that it was a bypass there, and they come up Main Street or Church Street anyway, and it does a lot of damage to our houses, and these are gonna be substantial sized trucks, I imagine. Am I correct?
Probably triaxle dump trucks, yeah.
Yeah, so we don't really want them on our main streets. If you can make them aware of that each trip, that would be great.
Yeah, the map that we showed up there, that's kind of like the suggested routes to get to places. That's something that we could have in our scale house, because basically when somebody gets a load of stone, they drive into the site, they get it loaded, they come across our scale, they get a ticket, they have to come into our building to get the ticket. So that's something you can put on the wall, or, you know, or just verbally tell them, hey, can you make sure you go this way?
Yeah, the gentleman here was saying, we don't have our own trucks, or they're just customers coming in to get stone, but we do that quite frequently at other quarries, where we give them a pamphlet or like a map on a wall. Here's a list of where, you know, we think you should go, or, you know, specifically talk about the bypass. So that's what they do with that information is kind of up to them, but we can easily, you know, try to educate them as best we can. And, you know, we're open door, so if there is an issue and people have, you know, questions or concerns, that you know where to find us.
Yeah, but, I'm full of questions here. What size aggregate are we talking about? And I have a follow-up question as a part. Is that going to be, are they varying sizes of aggregate?
Yeah, I mean, we'll make whatever size people want. We make the real big rocks.
Sure.
We sell a lot of those. Most of the rock that we sell is basically 1.5 inch top size and down to small size, fine aggregate.
Okay. Do you have a rating of aggregate, and just so that,
Well, I'm
like,
not sure what, I don't know if they in Maryland, we usually make generally Astro sizes,
Okay.
SHDO. We make usually screenings, which are the finest 1/8 inch or less. We make
Okay.
1/4 inch most places. We make a number 8.
Okay.
Number 57, which is like a 1/2 inch up to 57. And then we do make some larger sizes, 2 or 3 inch rock, 4 inch rocks. But I mean, most of it is 1.5 inch minor, you know, or some construction jobs. It's generally a smaller percentage of our total sales.
I mean, it really is customer dictated, so
Sure.
whatever the customer demand is usually what we make the most of.
So my follow-up question to that is, so all of us have driven behind trucks with the pebble size aggregate, and is there going to be a requirement, even though they're not your trucks, a requirement for the aggregate to have covers? Because, you know, I mean, this is a hilly country, you know, countryside, and trucks driving down the road. You know, again, I'm thinking of, you know, and maybe I don't want to make too big of a deal out of this, other than to say that, you know, we want to make sure the aggregate stays in the truck. And, you know,
That I'm not familiar with. I'm not aware of what the requirements are in Maryland. I just know like in Pennsylvania, where, you know, most of the trucks leave our properties tarped.
Sure.
I'd assume there's similar type requirements.
Yeah, so Pennsylvania,
I'm pretty sure state law says they gotta be.
Pennsylvania DOT, it's state law, you have to be tarped.
Right.
So I'm not sure what it is in Maryland, but I
It
would hope
is.
it's the same.
It's the same.
I think that's it
This
for me.
operation is right here at Medford.
Yeah.
3.5 miles, so
Well, I
we're
was-
already seeing traffic from there.
Yeah.
And not all the traffic will be coming through New Windsor, because probably 50%, I bet, if not more, will be going towards Frederick.
Sure.
You know, so we'll have an impact, yes, but I'm, you know, and it may take some trucks away from Medford.
Right.
You know, I'm sure that's what they want. You know?
All for it.
So, you know, instead of coming through town and going to Frederick, maybe it's going to be a help to us, you know?
Be south instead.
Yeah.
Be south instead.
So, you know, but I know Kent has always been very receptive to any complaints that we get, you know, for whatever reason it is, and it's been very seldom, thank goodness, but I feel you guys will be real receptive to listening to us when we have a concern, as well as you and Bridgetown Council.
We'd rather have concerns brought up to us rather than have them fester for 2
Right.
years and then, you know, we don't know what's going on. It's maybe something we could have addressed fairly easily, so.
I'm Kim Schultz. Thank you all for being here. I think you've heard loud and clear that our biggest concern is the trucks, and I think Mayor Roop is right that probably most of the traffic will be south of town. But I appreciate your offer to help, and we'll be happy to give you a big old poster of where they're not supposed to turn, because there's 2 big huge signs that say no trucks, and I live at one of the corners and all day long, you know. So we appreciate your help, and I'm sure you'll leave your contact with us, and we'll be able to share information. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Probably more
We
time.
went into the 10 minutes, I believe, but.
That's all right, that's all right. It's been very helpful to us. And Kent, before you leave, I just want, on behalf of the town and the residents of New Windsor, thank
It's okay, you can pass it on.
Lehigh Cement Company for their great contribution to Fountain Park. If you're going to be available, we would like to have you here, or representatives from Lehigh, Saturday, October 1st. I think we're planning on an official ribbon cutting, if you will, but at Music on the Main. So kind of, we're going to have a plaque. Gary's been working on a plaque.
It's in order.
It's ordered, so we'd like to dedicate that wall and recognize Lehigh Cement Company for their contribution to that, financial contribution to that effort. Without that, we probably would not have that beautiful wall up there. So we want you to be welcome there, and we also thank you and Brian here, who's been working with you, I think, to get another tour lined up, if everything works out all right, of the New Windsor plant 3-bus tours during Music on the Main. So as always, Kent, I thank you for, you talked about community outreach. We do greatly appreciate that here in New Windsor. So again, on behalf of the council and the residents of New Windsor, thank you for that.
Thank you.
And Kent, while you're here, I was going to bring it up later in my report, but we also want to thank you for the street sweeper that was here last week and ran around town and cleaned all our streets. And it doesn't sound like a big deal, but the Public Works crew is out there trying to paint the curbs, and that certainly helped them when they had gone through and swept all those and cleaned that up for them. So thank you again for that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, mayor's report.
Thank you, guys.
Do you have it on here? Does it say mayor's report?
Go to mayor and,
Where?
Have my report there.
He's looking for it.
which one are you in?
Council meeting?
No, it was under,
There it is.
there it is, yeah.
June 22, 2020.
there we go.
All right.
Let me,
Well, this past month was busier than most of the months prior to this past month. I was sworn in as mayor by Heather DeWeese, clerk of the Circuit Court for Carroll County, on May 5th. Attended the Music on the Main planning meeting, attended Carroll County Veterans Celebration at the Farm Museum. attended the work session, communicated with Senator Reedy regarding additional funding for capital projects, and I will probably be giving him some numbers. However, and Gary has sent me some information on the latest streetscape committee meetings, so my goal is to get State Highway Administration additional funding to do the project the way it really should be. They cut it down, just a little history on streetscape. It had been back in the late 90s.
Early 90s.
Early 90s. The late 90s is when it was cut out. The funding was cut out. And then I think it was 2014, I was approached and whether or not we wanted to get the streetscape project back up and running. It's changed names a couple times. We still go by streetscape, but it's a safety enhancement project. And it would start out at about $10 million, and that included realignment of Springdale Avenue, a roundabout down by 7-Eleven, where Springdale would come into there, and then also replacement of the storm drains. Then we worked with the State Highway for a couple years, and then they said that was too much money. So then we agreed to take out the roundabout, the realignment of Springdale, and the stormwater management system. I figured, one, if the stormwater management failed, they're going to have to come in and replace it and repave everything, so that wasn't going to be on us. And then they were okay with that for a while, and then they said that that's still too much money. So that's when they cut out the beautiful walls down on High Street and Main Street, upper end of Main Street, I guess about the 400 block, and then the 400 block down here at High Street. They wanted to do away with that and several other things and cut the project down to about $3.5 million. And that was not satisfactory to me because it's a safety enhancement project, and the most dangerous part is the lower part of High Street and upper part of Main Street, where people have to literally get into the street, into a highway to mow their yard, their bank. So I wanted to eliminate that, and I think everybody has seen the pictures of the walls. The council, I think, has. We can make them public again, but I think we're only probably $1.5 million to $2 million away, and you know, I just feel we need to work on that and get State Highway to fight a little bit for us. But Senator Reedy is on board trying to get us more money. He's been out here a couple times. So, secured keynote speaker for Memorial Day service. There you go. Attended Maryland Municipal League chapter dinner. Attended a Memorial Day service here in New Windsor, and as well as Union Bridge. And I communicated today, actually, with Maryland Budget and Management Secretary David Brinkley regarding the funding of additional capital projects. And I talked about our park that I would like to see us build down where the lagoons were. And he said, well, send me a letter, and if a little history with that, where the lagoon, one major lagoon was, is now filled in and is being mowed. And I would like to see a park down there. Now, originally, we kind of looked at a artificial turf field, but I'm not so sure we need to do that when we have 3 other fields that maybe we can eventually turn into artificial turf fields. Just ideas. You know, I saw this past week there was a splash park. I don't know whether we want something like that, but if we took out the artificial field, we would have a lot more room and possibly more room for parking, which was an issue. So he said, send him something, and I'm going to put a figure on it. I won't make it public at this time. I don't want my 7 colleague mayors to ask for money as well. So, and then also with that, University of Maryland, the PALS project came out, and they had 2 teams of grad students, 3-4 years ago, I think, and I didn't tell them to, but they incorporated the carnival grounds in with that to make a very nice community regional park. Now, whether or not we want to incorporate that with the fire department is to be seen. So You know, I think there's some ways that we could probably enhance their fundraising efforts. There's money in Annapolis, so we're going to be going after it. Any questions on my report? All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Was that better than you having to give that report?
Yes. And I am so glad that you're advocating for streetscape again, because that
Yes.
has been in the works for almost 30 years. And
Yes.
we waited a long time for that money, and we should get it.
We're going to be pushing for it. Council committees, community enhancement, Councilwoman Gribben-Liberman.
Okay, well, good evening, and I've been involved in quite a few things going on over the past.
Excuse me, let me interrupt you just a second. I want to thank you for putting on Memorial Day service. So I know that was a lot of work, probably a lot of stress, a lot of worry, but it turned out very nice. So thank you for your efforts.
Well, one of the first things we did, and I did talk about it, I think the last time, was the spring cleanup day, and it was a great success. And we were able to clean up our gardens and plant beautiful flowers to enhance the town. And I just wanted to point out that if any residents live near one of the parks and they see that the flowers are, wilting a little, don't be afraid to splash a little water on there, because we planted them for the town's enjoyment. And it's hard to get around to water all these parks, so if you can splash a little water somewhere, that's a great help, because we, put a fair amount of money into landscaping, and we want those plants to be able to survive and come back again next year, because some of them are perennials. I'd also like to thank the Eclectic Motor Company for their donation of $500 to help for paying for mulch and seeds and so forth for the town cleanup day. And I'd also like to thank Matt and Corby Fowler, who donated 2 cement planters, fully planted, to be on the wall outside of Fountain Park, and it just looks gorgeous. So thank you so much to those folks for helping out with our community cleanup day. I also want to talk about the Memorial Day ceremony, and it did turn out really nicely. And I want to thank Troop 582 and their leaders for participating and providing us and doing the flag ceremony for us. I'd like to thank Reverend Paul Matthews for providing us with spiritual guidance through his invocation in the beginning. I'd also like to thank Mr. Jason Siddock from the Veterans Independence Project. He was our major speaker for the event. And I'd like to thank Maddie Nelson, who is a 7th grade student who came and read 2 poems for us for that event. And I'd like to thank everybody that came. I want to talk a little bit about the Hometown Hero banners. Thank you to everybody who came through and sent in your information and your pictures for the banners, because I think we're only missing like 2 or 3 now. And Kalina and I are going to get together next week and get it all rolling, and we're going to order the banners and so forth. The money's already been approved, and we should be getting them in plenty of time for Veterans Day. So you can hope to see those hanging up, in the fall. Turn over to my next page here. Music on the Main. We're in need of vendors. So if you know anybody that wants to have a table at Music on the Main to sell their products, that would be fabulous. We would love to have them. And we have a Music on the Main meeting on the 2nd Tuesday of every month, and it's at 7 o'clock right here in Town Hall. And you're all invited to participate in that. And then we had a meeting for the town parks, and Councilwoman
There's only one other.
Schultz, I'm sorry, Councilwoman Schultz. Did you want me to read that whole thing? Because you had said.
I have that in my report.
Oh, you do? Okay, so then that's it for me, and apologize for that.
All right.
A little bit. So if there's any questions about any of that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
I have a quick question. The business cards for Music on the Main, are they in yet?
I'll check with Colleen on that. I know she ordered them because I was here when she ordered them.
Yeah.
So she hasn't mentioned that they are in, and I think she might have, so I'll check with her on that.
Because we'll bring them down to the conference.
Okay, great.
And with those business cards, put some in your car, in your pockets, wherever, and if you go to a festival, craft show, whatever, and you see something that might be entertaining here for New Windsor, give them a card and explain it to them. They love the fact that there's free spaces, other than paying $25 up front, and then they get their money back when they show up. So you'd go out and about somewhere, and it doesn't matter where it is, because there was one group here last year that traveled probably an hour and a half to get here, and they were extremely happy. So just because you might be going a couple hours away, those vendors may be a lot closer to New Windsor than the actual site. So, all right, thank you very much. Public Works, Councilman Huffman.
Good evening, everyone. Public Works, as typical, has been very busy. Some of the highlights include they've been working to keep up with the mowing and weed trimming. We've been having some, intermittent rain, and the grass with the heat has really been taken off, and some of the areas, when it just gets a little water on it, the areas become very difficult to mow and have to dry out for a couple days. So if you're wondering why some of the areas aren't mowed, there's a possibility that's a reason. They've been working really hard trying to keep up with that. They have been watering the plants and flowers that Councilman Lindeman had talked about. They've been going around and watering them as much as they can. The extreme temperatures that we've had lately require more frequent watering, so I'll echo the sentiment that if you can splash some water on it, that'll save the Public Works some time as well, if you see that. They have just recently stained the fence at Fountain Park. They started, as I mentioned earlier, they started to paint the curbs on Church Street. They've been coordinating with Ichabod's tree experts who are working at the Atlee Ridge Walking Trail to clean up all the dead ash trees from the destructive ash borer beetle invasion that we had down there. And lastly, I'll say it again, the Public Works wanted to make sure that we did thank Lehigh for the street sweeping last week. I happened to be around and saw them, and I think they did most of the roads here in town. They spent a good amount of time here, so we do appreciate that. The Planning Commission, we did meet in May. However, we did not have a quorum due to some unexpected absences, so we did not hold a formal meeting. The next scheduled Planning Commission meeting will be 27 June.
Any questions or comments? Yes.
Next time, I'd like to suggest next time you have Lehigh sweep the streets, you kind of let people know so they can get the cars off the street.
Yes, so Public Works Director Myers is going to work with Lehigh to set up a schedule to possibly do that at given intervals, and he wants to get the word out to the folks so that we can do exactly what you said, get the cars moved and all. Thank you for that.
It was kind of a quick turnaround on Lehigh's part, and we didn't, have that week notice or something, so we still greatly appreciate that. But as Councilman Huffman said, Wayne's going to be working with Lehigh, so that maybe every 6 months, and whether it's the first Monday or whatever of the month or something, every six months or however we do it, people will know. Now, well, not people will remember, but we will be publicizing it. So thank you.
I had a question for Councilman Hull, perhaps Town Manager Dyer, Attorney Ostrander. I had somebody contact me this week complaining that there were weeds in the sidewalk cracks and wanting the town to do something about that. And I said, I believe that that's on the property owner. So I just wanted to clarify that and just get a chance to say in this forum that if there's weeds in your sidewalk, it's your responsibility to weed whack them, not the town's. So
there is a ordinance on that we had a nickname for, but it's from the curb in to the property.
That's what I thought. Thank you. But not near storm drains.
Not near storm. Or water supplies, or small children.
Read the package.
Good point. Thank you. Water and Sewer, Councilman Hall.
All right, so the Public Works Department, as Councilman Hoffman said, is very busy with mowing and painting and such. But as many of you know, they're the same people that have to manage the water and sewer system. So while their time was spent with that, they still were able to make a lot of meetings with GMB for some upcoming projects like the water line replacement and E&R planning for the sewer side. So on probably the next week, I'll be meeting with Director Myers and Town Manager Dye just to go over some future projects once we get past the water line replacement. That's all I have to report.
Any questions or comments for Councilman Hall? Thank you. Public Safety, Councilman Cornick.
Yep, good evening, everyone. I do have a public safety report in the folder, but I can read from it and we can share it with the folks if we. I think we're down.
There we go.
Quarterly, yep, there we go. All right, so on the May 24th, Councilwoman Schultz and I, Kim Schultz and I had a public safety meeting. It was our quarterly meeting that we're reporting for tonight. So we had the meeting on the 24th. It was a brief meeting to essentially discuss some of the items that we both have been working on with regard to general public safety for the town of New Windsor. The list below kind of is a summary of what we discussed, but we gathered and shared information regarding the traffic signage and speed calming tactics that we had been talking about over the last couple months. Prior to the meeting, Councilwoman Schultz took pictures of different types of traffic signage in neighboring towns. Councilman Cornick solicited pricing and information on illuminated solar traffic signage from the Traffic Safety Corporation. It's just a company that I saw on the internet. So I'd seen them in several towns, and I thought, hey, let me check it out and get some information. They weren't exactly forthcoming with a lot of information, but they're pretty much an online sales company that you pretty much have to investigate or solicit information about specific signs. They don't have any brochures, so one of the things I'll continue to do, there's several companies out there that do that. I will say they did send me a quote for illuminated speed sign and stop sign, and they were both in the neighborhood of $2,000 a piece. So there's accessories that go with it. They're batteries, and they have the solar pieces that were extra. So we'll keep looking into that. Both committee members rode through different communities with traffic calming devices such as road humps and extended curbing. Extended curbing is what we talked about with the State Highway Administration and regarding bumping out the walkways and the curbs to kind of reduce the appearance of the roadways so that you could calm the traffic down or slow the traffic down. So I did kind of view some of that with different communities. I know there's some places in Westminster that are utilizing it. You know, one of the things I've also noticed, if you drive in any of the recently developed parking lots or any kind of new development parking lots for malls and shopping centers, you'll notice, and many people that I've talked to have noticed, how difficult it is to kind of maneuver those parking lots at a high rate of speed. And that's all by design because they don't want people speeding through the parking lot. So it would be, as cumbersome as they can be, they do serve the purpose. If you notice, people still tend to drive pretty quickly, but one thing that I'm thinking of is if you've ever been in Eldersburg where the new Walmart is, it's like driving through a maze to get there, and that's all by design to slow traffic down. So we would try to, to potentially incorporate some of that on some of our main streets to try to slow traffic down. We also discussed the potential for a meeting with, between the mayor, not to pile stuff on your agenda, Mr. Mayor, but one of the things that we'd like to possibly do is have you meet with the sheriff after the election to kind of talk about the future or sustainable public safety strategy for New Windsor. As you know, right now we're sharing a deputy, and prior to me coming on the council, I think we had a dedicated deputy, but obviously there's a fiscal financial piece to that, so we would like to talk about that a little bit further to see what the coming years will look like in terms of public safety. And then finally, we'd also, as a committee, would like to alert the citizens about a recent uptick in thefts on decorative items from people's homes, off of porches and around their houses. So we just want to make sure that people are aware of it and that they report it to the sheriff's department if something actually happens to you or if you witness something like that, so that we can kind of get out ahead of this. So that's it. That's what I have for my meeting, or our meeting for the month. And if there are any questions, feel free to let me know.
Well, since the sheriff is running unopposed, I probably wouldn't have to wait until after the election.
I was giving you time.
Okay. I appreciate that.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'll just piggyback on that because Councilman Cornick and I discussed this in our meeting, and I've talked to Deputy Calusi several times, and one of the things he shared is he's getting pulled in a lot of different directions. He's on a lot of committees, et cetera, and they're all things that are important. And of course, right now, for those of you who don't know, they're asking all the deputies to stay in your schools, considering what happened last week in Texas. But, and he's concerned that we don't sound like we're complaining, and I said I certainly wouldn't expect that the mayor would ever sound like he was complaining, but
No.
It doesn't feel like we're getting as much coverage in town as we once did, so we just need to think about what we can do to improve that.
All right. Very good. Any questions or comments for Councilman Cornick? Thank you. Economic Development, Councilwoman Schultz.
One of the things about being the last person on this list is people say stuff I was going to say, so.
Dana, could you move that around? Thank you.
No, it's fine. Just to be redundant a little bit about the Eclectic Motor Company, because Sharon already thanked them, and of course Gary mentioned them previously, but I don't think we ever actually said, and maybe I'm misremembering, welcome to town. So for those of you who don't know, it's Eclectic Motor Company, not electric. And they are at the bottom of Church Street, and as we've already heard, they've done a lot of things. In addition to what Councilwoman Gribben-Lindeman mentioned, they also have offered to assist in restoring our cannons in the Memorial Park. And the other thing is that they I don't really know exactly how it happened, but they contacted Public Works Director Dye about meeting with town representatives to possibly organize some kind of group for businesses, which we've tried to do in the past, so that would be great to have a business get involved in that, so stay tuned. I did notice just recently, that's not really in town, but I thought I'd mention it anyways, that we have a new business just outside of town. It's called Chesapeake Speed Shop, so welcoming them to the area too. And while I was thinking about both of these businesses, I just thought I would remind everybody, we have a lot of small businesses in New Windsor, so please support them. And if you know of a new business, please let me know, because I might not know about it. And there's a lot of resources at the county level to help small businesses. So I'd like to share that information with any new business that's getting started. As was mentioned, we had our subcommittee meeting, and mostly what we talked about was, in addition to the upcoming meeting with the Eclectic Motor Company, was the intersection of town beautification and economic development, and possible things that we could do in the future to make the town more inviting. Some of the things we talked about, and these would have to be budgeted for in another year, would be plantings around the town signs. A couple of residents have mentioned, in some towns you go in and hanging off the poles, they have those big baskets with flowers in them. I mean, we were just in Virginia this weekend, and we saw several small towns that had. I know they're expensive, so we were sort of brainstorming, maybe people would contribute to, you know, if one of the nonprofits in town wanted to host a fundraiser, buy a basket or something like that. So we're just kind of beginning to think about it. So we'd love to have inputs if anybody has any thoughts. The other thing that I just want to remind everybody is that the Carroll County Downtowns Group is going to be at MML. So let's make sure we also get the flyers, you know, that you created, Dana, to Will, because he can leave them at their table. And people, and maybe we could, you know, because that highlights the need for vendors. So like Mayor Roop said, you know, you never know where people will come from for a free spot. And just a reminder that I'm on the HSP Community Action Board, and they do still have water, all utility money. So if anybody's having trouble with their water bill, contact Kalina, she has their information.
And that new business is Eclectic? Eclectic.
I know, it's hard to say.
And they're in the old Southern States building, right?
They're in the, yeah, in the old Southern State. He's doing that on purpose because nobody knows anything about what, except for, well, there's a few people in this room who know what that was, but Linda does, but.
Dale.
Dale, yeah,
So,
yes. For those of you who were here 50 years ago.
any questions or comments for Councilman Schultz? All right, thank you. Town Manager, Gary?
Okay, first I'm going to start off by saying that I'll apologize. There's a few things that I threw into my town manager's report that actually 3 of the 6 items actually came in after 12 o'clock today. So they were important enough to be talked about, discussed. Instead of changing the agenda, I put them in my report. First of all, I wanted to do a town hall audio visual upgrade. Or update here. The upgrade was approved at the May 16th work session for a total not to exceed cost of $19,232.13. CMC's portion of that is $10,458, and Tomlin Technologies' portion is $87,74.13. The notice to proceed was issued to both CMC and Tomlin Tech on May 18th. The electrical outlet and on the wall for the future TV, and then also in the utility room was done on May 25th, and that was part of Tomlin Tech's portion of that service. CMC equipment order through G&G Technologies Inc. was approved and ordered May 27th, and Tomlin Technologies will be scheduling the cabling install for a Thursday or a Friday, preferably a Friday. We may or may not have to be down internet for an hour or so when they do the final transition. So Friday, we figured afternoon to be the better day. COVID-19 administrative leave. Resolution 31522B was adopted, approved and adopted at the March 21st work session meeting. The resolution allowed for up to 10 days of administrative leave for an employee due to COVID-19 who had to quarantine or take care of an immediate family member, followed standard procedure, and provided test results and or doctor's notes, and the administrative leave would be approved by the town manager. One employee was out quarantining due to COVID-19 prior to the resolution being adopted, and I just wanted to ask the question this evening, would the council consider making the approval of the administrative leave retroactive in this specific case? Question.
How many days was it?
It was up to 10.
Up to 10?
He used more than 10. So.
Michelle, thoughts?
I see no reason why you couldn't. I mean, you've got one individual at this point. You would know by now if you had more. So it's not like your entire staff is going to be putting in that claim.
Thank goodness.
The one thing I do have to mention, though, is I think originally when we were discussing it, we did have a provision in there to, for prior to the resolution, and that was removed, if I was not mistaken.
I think you're right.
So that would be, in effect, putting it back in. Because when we adopted it, we decided we were not going to approve past usage.
Okay.
Council, that's what you passed. What are your feelings now?
I don't recall. Without having it in front of me, I just don't remember.
What are you saying? I can't hear you.
I'm muttering, I apologize. I said I don't recall the difference between the drafts and the ultimately adopted document. I just don't remember
either.
all of that.
I don't either.
I mean, if there's been a decision made not to apply it essentially retroactively, then perhaps you shouldn't.
That could change now, I'm just saying that's...
So there's been several reiterations, I don't remember the specifics, but I do recall something to that effect. The one employee asked me a couple times, and I said I would at least put it in front of the council for consideration. That's all I'm doing.
Thoughts?
So my question is, we're asking for retroactive coverage from, was this a recent?
No, he was out prior to adopting the resolution, prior to the adoption of the resolution.
And did he end up using his personal time off?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, so this would just replace 10 days of his leave time.
I think his illness was the impetus for us having the conversation, sort of. Because you became concerned that if this happened to a lot of
To other
staff.
staff of
what was-
small staff,
right,
small
right,
number of people.
Right, right.
Well, Will, I remember what you said. I do not remember why we said it. I know we talked about it over a couple months. I don't know if part of our reason was we didn't know who was going to, and now we do. But I don't remember the exact reason why we decided not to make it retroactive at the time.
Yeah, I can't remember. I just remember it was in there and it ended up in the final draft being removed. I don't know if that was just because we didn't know if there was going to be more after we started the draft and before
Right.
the final, or because I would assume that anything, long history back we would know about. But
Well, if that's the case, then I don't recall that, but that's fine. I mean,
I don't know what we need to do about this, but I don't really have personally, I don't have a problem with it because it isn't going to be something that everyone's going to say, well, wait a minute, I had COVID and I want my 10 days of leave. So, that's,
anything moving forward, obviously. could fall
obviously,
under
there isn't
the
going to be anybody
resolution.
else because we know at this point what was going on. I don't know what everybody else thinks, but do we need to do anything formal or can we just, Michelle,
Would you have to change the policy? I mean, it's,
what do we need to do?
I hate to do this, but I don't know without looking at it. I really would want to look at the express language in there, which I just don't have. So if there probably isn't a pressing emergency on this because the time's already been used, but if we can take a look at it.
That's fine.
And maybe even look at some of the discussions that we had
notes,
and then come back and discuss it maybe at the work session.
Because
You
we
won't be
might
here at
see,
the work
we
session.
might see something that reminds us of what Councilman
Of why it
talking
happened.
about,
Yeah.
right,
That's fine.
right.
Let's just take a little more
Tell 'em the lawyer's
detailed look.
looking at it.
Okay, will do.
I mean, I know there's two sides to this, and this was done, I'm not passing the buck or anything, but, I'd like for the town hall to be employee-friendly. And I understand the not going back retroactive because everybody, maybe in a large office where there's 100 people, then yes, that could be a huge issue. But when we have a staff of under 10, I'm not so sure it's a huge issue.
And I think that was why we voted
It may not
for
be
it.
pressing to get it done, however, it might be pressing to that individual.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not suggesting we just postpone it indefinitely.
No,
I just don't-
no,
I'm
but-
hesitant
but
to make a decision tonight
For
without
them
us looking
to
at it.
have vacation plans,
Yeah.
so.
Dana, you were just looking at all the, reviewing all the leave, and he has plenty of leave at this point.
Some, he does not have a lot.
When's his anniversary date, do you remember?
September.
But we could make a decision.
We'll take a look
We could
at
make a
it
decision at
and
the
let
work
the
session.
let the
Yeah.
fellow
I
know.
would hope before September.
All right, that's fair.
That's my, I mean, I know we don't want to set a policy and then change it. However, my bottom line is, it has always been that we are employee-friendly. So that's my bottom line. So,
I'll tell him that we're going to take a look at it.
all right, thank you.
Thank you. Wastewater treatment plant, ENR preliminary engineering report update. So GMB submitted the draft PER on May 17th. The PER is 310 pages. 68 of which are background, existing and proposed information, followed by 5 appendices. So Director Wayne Myers and myself met with GMB today. We had a good long 2-hour meeting the first meeting to go through the general information. and it was a good meeting. The next step will be, I had gone through it, at least the first 68 pages, pretty detailed, and I'm going to put together a list of comments to them. Wayne is going to look at it a little more in detail now that we've had our meeting, and then get our comments to GMB, and at that point then they will submit a draft PER to MDE. This is a very long process. When they do submit the draft PER to MDE, they will have the overall study of they looked at 3 different options for ENR treatment as well as sludge treatment. So they will present all those as a requirement that MDE wants to see. They have a recommendation, and they will then submit the request for the percentage of funding available from MDE. And that's what MDE will review and then approve. And a lot of times there's back and forth with GMB will push on our behalf for as high and as great amount of reimbursement percentage-wise as we can. May require some meetings going down to MDE, which is always fun if anyone's ever done that. But it is a long process, so that's kind of where we are. I think GMB did a really good job overall looking at several options, and like I said, they have a recommendation in there, and it was on par with what Director Myers and myself feel is the direction, the choice that we prefer as well. So that's kind of an update on that, so more to come there. So again, it's kind of a tedious, long process, but we're making strides there. So then a couple of things that came up recently, the town-county agreement for fiscal year 22-23. Just got this today. Mayor Roop will need to sign it. This is a yearly agreement, and the agreement pertains to sharing of funds and participation in planning and other governmental functions between New Windsor and the county commissioners. The net grant amount from the county to New Windsor is exactly as what we have budgeted in our approved budget of $69,285. So I have a copy of that for the mayor to sign, and then the Carroll County Commissioner, President, and Vice President will sign. Tim Burke has already signed as county attorney, then we'll get copies, signed copies from everybody.
What was the 69,000?
69,285.
And then some was taken out for the...
That's the net.
Right.
Yes. I have a breakdown here. If the total of grant, there's 2 portions. It's 83,146 from the county, and then there's another small one of 1254, which gives a total of 84,400. And then we pay our portion. We don't pay it; they just subtract it from the grant for our MOU for the NPDES permit of $3,827, and then for the MS4 permit is $11,288, which leaves a net of $69,285, which is exactly what we have in our budget line item as approved.
Any questions or comments on that?
That's the breakdown of that.
Do I hear a motion that we approve the county-town agreement?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
We have a motion second to approve the county-town agreement. Any questions or comments? All those in favor, signify by saying aye, and raise your hand.
Aye.
Thank you. So carried.
I'll get you to sign that after.
All right.
The grant award from the state of Maryland for Maryland 31 water main replacement, just received an email today. I forwarded it to the mayor and council. It was from the Maryland Department of General Services. The email included it's called a PAYGO grant award letter for $4 million and a 2-page general information form. Clerk Treasurer Mangus and myself will work with GMB to complete and submit the information form. So that's the original paperwork and contact from Department of General Services. So that's a good sign moving forward. So now the paperwork fund will begin.
I would like to thank the council, and I believe, Dave, you put a packet together for our delegation that kind of followed my efforts over the years. So I greatly appreciate everybody stepping up. And now, Gary, the paperwork's yours. Or Mike's.
And Mike's. Okay, and then lastly, on my report is change order number 2 for the, it's the SHA streetscape utility improvements, but it's for the Maryland water line design from GMB. Following our meeting on April 28th of this year with GMB and town staff, GMB submitted a change order to address the additional effort associated with revisions to the Maryland 31 water main improvement project requested by the town staff. The changes requested by Director Myers and myself included replacing additional fire hydrants and adding fire hydrant, making all the fire hydrants new and adding a few additional ones at key places. All water house connections and water meters will be new. Extending the new water main further down Main Street from the intersection with Springdale to tie in with the line that connects from the bottom of Church and runs behind 7-Eleven up through Springdale property to Springdale Road. By extending that down and tying in there, we can eliminate that piece through Springdale property and have a better setup with valving and control of the system through there. So these changes, which are pretty expensive, are part all of what GMB needs to do to update all the plans. They got to do additional sediment control for the new section, updating all the sheets, and then also they're going to be providing an updated engineer's cost estimate with current prices, which needs to be updated with today's prices and issues and marketing or equipment supply chain issues. So all that's going to be part of their change order. So and can you bring that? I put the copy of it in there, and I didn't have the total in here. I apologize for that.
On your
it should be in that share file.
Is it on the town manager report?
No,
or is it a different one?
should be.
It was like $17,000 right
No,
there.
it was.
No?
Do you know what it's a?
It's like 42, right?
47.
47?
GMB, this one?
Yes. Yes, quote down there. And now that I've just mentioned that we have our funding being secured through State Department of General Services, I want to push this project to the finish line, approve the change order tonight, and issue the notice to proceed. I do not want to wait until the the July council meeting, because I will not be here for the work session.
That's the right one, because this says 47,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it. So what, can you give me that total? I'm sorry.
So it's $47,919.
919. Okay. And then at the end of that, they say upon notice to proceed, they will have all the work done on the plans, the new cost estimate, and a 2-month turnaround time. So I want to keep that thing moving now that we have funding, and we're working on the funding through DGS.
So the funding's there for this?
Yeah, the funding for this, we're going to add the additional cost. That's a good point. Thank you, Neil. Up to this point, the town has paid out of the general fund, the enterprise fund, the design cost to GMB up to this point. This additional money, we've checked with the many pages of the ARPA, literally 1,000 some pages of ARPA money. We didn't read through it all, but we're 99% certain we can use the ARPA money for this design for a water line project. So we're going to use some of the already allocated ARPA money for this additional overage. So
thank you.
I want to get a vote to,
Yep.
it's above my limit to approve without council approval.
Thereby understanding the change order of $47,000 and
$47,919.
$919. Any questions? Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the change order.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the change order of additional $47,919. Any questions or comments? All those in favor, signify by saying aye and say, raise your hand.
Aye.
All approved. There you are,
All I
sir.
have for my report right now.
And as we talked earlier, Gary, when GMB has a presentation, I think we need a separate work session.
For the PER?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So-
We're down the road a little bit with that.
Right.
Definitely keep that in mind. But I
Right.
think it's, that will be detailed enough to where we probably want to have a separate work session discussion on that. They will get into a lot of detail that is much better than I can tell you all.
Right. And right now, just a little history, our system for many years was Lagoon. And then, of course, we received a letter 2006, 2007, I don't know when it was, when it started. And we had to upgrade our wastewater treatment facility. The lagoons could no longer meet the criteria set by EPA down to MDE. And we upgraded it. We were one of the first small municipalities to have to do this. And then after we put this in place, most of the larger, what I call the 66 big boys that were discharging 500,000 gallons a day, which we were nowhere near that, they were receiving money from the Bay Restoration Fund. There's a whole story behind that if you want to sit down and talk, but might put you to sleep. But then way back, probably 5-6 years ago, Frank Schaefer, who was town manager at the time, and we started discussing upgrading to ENR. Due to the fact that at that time there was 75% funding, which is still in place. And my position was that sooner or later, MDE is going to make ENR mandatory. Now, let's do it while the funding's there, because at some time that funding may go away and you have to pay 100% of it. So paying 25% plus the state has been kind enough to pretty much offset that 25%. So I think now is the time. We still have a lot of hurdles to go through, but that's kind of a little bit of the history behind ENR.
The only thing I'll add, Mayor, is that the funding is up to 75%.
Right.
Because the breakdown that GMB will submit to MDE lists the various components of the upgrade, and certain things are eligible for certain percentages, some are not, like
Right.
UV lighting at the discharge, you won't get anything for it no matter what. And some of the things that they'll go to battle for us that we talked about today was when we went to BNR to upgrade, 10, 11 years ago, we got Bay Restoration funding for that, and MDE may counter on certain components saying, well, you've already got money to do X, and they will fight. That's where some of the back and forth will go back, with MDE.
Just keep in mind, $1 million of that came out of the state's general fund, didn't come from MDE.
You'll be invited to the MDE meetings.
All right.
And last year at the summer conference, MDE did have a presentation that I went to, and one of the things they were talking about is ENR and how, and in the coming years is what they said. So they're pushing for having that ENR as a state mandate.
Requirement.
Yeah.
And when we were putting this in, I would have been happy to hear up to 75% funded.
Yeah.
It was 0, so. All right, thank you. Any questions or comments for Town Manager Dye? Thank you. Is Wayne on?
No.
No, all right. You have a report for him?
Covered.
I think everybody's covered.
Between Will and Dave, they've pretty much covered that.
I have one other thing that would go under that, if that would be possible. Well, before I was asking Councilwoman Schultz if she wanted me to re-report, it was because we had a meeting with Public Works Director Myers, Circuit Rider Reynolds, Councilman Hoffman, and myself about the parks in the town. And so if you want me to, I can just go ahead and do that part now. Would that be okay? Okay.
Go ahead.
So Fountain Park really is kind of all under control because they've been working on that. And we still need to get signage to thank Lehigh that we're going to be putting up in the park there. And we're looking for a storage shed to complement, the look of the town and the park. So we're going to be putting a storage shed in there. They also talked about the location of a possible fire hydrant proposed for there, or a lateral water line so we have water for the park. and possibly to make the fountain work again. So those are the things that are going on with Fountain Park. At Gazebo Park, we talked about the fact that we have $53,500 to spend on the following things. $500 for the sign, $10,000 for painting and repairing the gazebo roof, $14,000 for benches, $16,000 for lighting and the receptacles, and $13,000 for tree removal and landscaping, which will be done by Ichabod Tree Services. And so the estimates and quotes are all being in the works, and the repairs should begin pretty soon, I believe, on getting the roof painted, on the gazebo and things like that. The other park that we talked about was Lions Club Park, and we currently have $46,600 to spend on the following for that park. $500 for a sign there, $15,000 for new benches, $31,000 for the retaining wall and grading the ground for the retaining wall. And also, out of the $31,000 would be repairs to the pavilion, including gutters on the roof, and there's no gutters on there, and so it's makes it very muddy all around there. And fixing the screen doors, rescreening windows, and painting and epoxy on the floor inside. So, you know, he's working on getting all those estimates and things and getting all that work done in the next future, you know, short-term future, I believe.
Great. Thank you. All right, Community Deputy, is Brian on?
He was over
Good evening.
Evening.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, sorry. It's been hectic at the schools and everything else. But anyways, the Carroll County Sheriff's Office between dates of May 1st to May 31st responded to 32 calls for service within the town limits. Out of those calls for service, only one required a report, which was the following. On May 9th at approximately 3:25 p.m., deputies responded to the 200 block of Main Street, reference to a residential burglary in progress. Investigation revealed that the known suspect got upset with the victim when they disconnected their phone conversation, causing the suspect to become very agitated. The suspect then forced entry into the victim's residence and assaulted said victim. Suspect remained on scene and was taken into custody and transported to the detention center without further incident. Case was closed by arrest. The only other thing, I've been meeting with Lena, and invitations for National Night Out will be going out hopefully tomorrow when I have time. So with that, we started that process probably 2 months ago, and we're moving along. So that's all I got.
Date of that August, what, it's second Tuesday, right? First Tuesday.
Correct. First Tuesday to August 2nd.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Any questions for Deputy Calusi? Thank you. West Carroll Rec Council? Nothing? Okay. Fire Chief, Byron?
Good evening, everybody. Fire calls for the month of May, 26 fire calls, 99 EMS calls, bringing us to year-to-date 126 fire calls and 396 EMS calls. Before I go any further in my report, just wanted to thank the mayor and staff. We had a small issue with the Dealman Inn. The fencing obstructed the fire hydrant, and that was remedied Tuesday when everybody came back to work. So all good. Just a reminder, our carnival is the 9th through the 11th. Good food, inflatables for the kids, lunches on Thursday and Friday from 11 to 1. So come down and get some good food and help support the fire company. Also, bingo starts back up on June the 28th. Fun, food, and great prizes, and we hope to see you all there.
Thank you, sir. And Byron wanted me to make this announcement because I know he didn't forget that the Windsor Lions Club will have their barrel train out there for the kids. So thank you for letting me say that, Byron. And also, the Lions Club will have pretzels, and all of that will go to Ukraine relief, so all the profits for that. And food starts at 5 o'clock?
Yes.
Yes, 5 o'clock. come out and support the volunteer fire department. So, all right, thank you, Brian. Treasurer, Dana?
Nothing to report, it's all been
Okay.
done. Just
Hey,
like you.
On the auditing, the contract, is that for another year or two with the auditing firm? We don't need to,
It won't be done until, and it'll be done August, September, and then they'll come in and audit us, and I'll have that.
but
ready.
we have a contract with
We have a
somebody now?
contract, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. Water and sewer billing clerk, Kalina?
I'll just go ahead and
Okay.
do that. So around 60 late notices were printed and mailed out on Tuesday, May 31st. Turn-off notices will be posted on Monday, June 13th. Water shutoffs will happen on Monday, June 20th. Meters will be read the last week of June, and the next water sewer bill will be mailed the first week of July. We'll keep our fingers crossed with our postal service distribution. That was my addition. Reminder to sign up for email water sewer bills and newsletter, and email Kalina if you would like to sign up. Just got to sign up here, and the more we get, more people we get signed up for email, the less we have to do bulk mailing, and the easier things will be.
Are we doing bulk or doing first class?
We do bulk for water.
Is it still bulk? I thought there was some discussion about going to first class.
We had already paid for the
Okay.
contract for the license.
All right.
I think it was like going forward from when.
So that's the water and sewer clerk.
All right, thank you. Code Enforcement Officer, Nicole?
Good evening, everyone. In reference to what was going on this month in May, I didn't give out any citations. We had 8 warning letters were sent out. 7 of them have been closed. 1 is still open, and we only had 1 nuisance report, which is jungle storage on the property, and that was taken care of right away. The complaints this month is grass and weeds, because it's grass and weed season now. So we received a couple of complaints from that. And one thing I wanted to mention, as far as the grass and weeds, around your mailboxes, some people have decorative flowers, but some people have weeds. And we need to get the weeds, and honestly, because I really wasn't, because I'm looking at it as flowers, but I got a couple of calls where your neighbors are complaining about the weeds around your mailboxes and the little, what we were talking about earlier, not so much the cracks, because I've had that too, but where you have your flower, on the other side of your house where the curb is, if you happen to have where you can plant a flower or a little tree or something like that, that's part of your responsibility to keep that maintenance and down to a certain level. So your neighbors are calling, just to let everyone know, the neighbors are calling all over New Windsor and complaining about various things, but right now it's just grass and weeds, and because it's grass and weed season. For the most part, when I send letters out, people, they go ahead and they mow the lawn. We still have 1 individual that's still in violation, but hopefully they'll come around. And also, I wanted to let everyone know, I accepted a job with Carroll County Courts, and my last day here will be June 14th.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I decided to go full-time, so I accepted a position with not Carroll County Courts, but the Maryland court system, so I'll be starting that on June 15th.
Well, sad moment, but thank you for everything you've done, and good luck in the future.
Well, don't we have to approve that?
Hey, first of all, she didn't say what year.
Right, so.
It's been great having you, Nicole. I'm just be sorry to see you go. Thanks for doing such a good job.
I was going to say this at the end, but I just wanted to thank Nicole personally. I want to congratulate her on her promotion, change of job, and thank you for your almost a year, just shy of a year of service to the town, and wish her the best in her new position.
And probably with that position, you came in probably at the worst time due to the fact that it had never been done before to this extent. So you were breaking new ground, but at the same time, you were setting a bar that now the council and staff know what is to be expected with the new person.
Right.
So,
Yeah, we'll be advertising for 2 positions. So.
Okay.
Cole's part-time position, the CEO, and then the new public works position. So I worked up a job description on that. Wayne's reviewing that, so when I get back, we're going to get that out on, both of those out onto the street.
All right.
Scared me for a minute. I thought
break.
that somebody else was leaving.
Somebody else. Again, thank you on behalf of the town residents, and good luck to you in your new chapter. Lehigh update, I think we've heard pretty good on that one. New business, GMB proposal for water and sewer GIS
Okay.
updates.
Yep, this was mentioned in my town manager's report at the May 4th council meeting, and at the request of Director Myers and myself, GMB submitted a proposal for water and sewer GIS updates. The proposal will continue development of the line work and database of the town's geographical information system. That's what GIS stands for the water and sewer systems. GMB previously assisted the town in initiating the development of the water, sewer, and storm drain GIS databases for the older sections of town system, and this effort will focus on the addition of Blue Ridge, Atlee Ridge, Tibbetts Lane, Union Square, Snyder Summit, the water storage tanks, and the sewer pump stations. The proposal will provide services on an hourly basis, plus related expenses such as mileage, printing, postage, etc., with an estimated upset limit of $17,985. So I have a copy in the folder of that proposal, and I would like to get requested general concurrence from the council moving forward with this project and the next step.
What was that again, 17,000 what?
$17,985. So we want to continue developing our GIS database. What I touched on before is the value of that, getting a complete GIS system for the whole town enables Public Works to do their job much easier, to be able to pull plans up basically in the field eventually off of a laptop or a tablet or something of that sort. Also will help us tremendously with planning capital projects, lining, things of that nature. It's just, data collection is a long, tedious process, but once it's complete, it's very, very beneficial.
But they have most of the town already,
We have
right?
the old town section, so we're going to be adding basically the perimeters, the subdivisions, and like I mentioned, Atlee, Tibbetts Lane, Union Square, Snyder's, Blue Ridge, and the tanks and the pump stations and things like that. So.
All right. Questions, comments? Do I hear a motion for approval of $17,985 for GMB proposal for the water and sewer GPS updates?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and second to accept the proposal of $17,985 for GMB to update the water and sewer GIS. Any questions or comments? All those in favor, signify by saying aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Those opposed, so carried. Which brought two things to my mind. One, are the Public Works guys exercising some of the newer valves?
They have done a couple of those, yes.
Okay. Especially College and Blue Ridge, since they're brand new, and I don't want them to get into the shape like all the others that we can't them. And then also about hydrant flushing.
Yeah, they haven't done anything since the original system that they did. So that's typically on a system of our size, it's around once a year type thing.
Right. All right. Thank you. Under other new business, consideration, discussion to add June 10th, June, yeah, thank you, 10th. June 20th, 2022 as Town Hall holiday, Juneteenth.
So Juneteenth is a federal, state, and county observed holiday that celebrates the freedom of enslaved people in the United States at the end of the Civil War. Banks and schools are closed. We adjusted our work session meeting from Monday to Tuesday as a result of that, and wanted to, do we want to add this to the list of town paid holidays?
I would say, yeah. I guess I can make a motion to approve that. I would just say, I would say we should follow all federal guidelines.
Kind of what the thought process was.
We need a motion.
Do we?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll make the motion to make Juneteenth a town hall holiday.
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, so carried. Any other new business? All right, old business, Dealman Inn Foundation Restoration Project update. Go ahead. As you see, the fenced-in area, as Chief Welker did say, we did have a little issue with the fire hydrant, just a little oversight, I guess, but he brought it to my attention, and I contacted Jeff Childs right away, and he texted Byron and I back that it would be taken care of as soon as possible. So this is a grant-funded project to stabilize the foundation at Dealman Inn. I submitted a grant, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago for about $800,000. I had it broken down to 5 phases. The state came out, they brought a team out, they met with our team up here, and they were real pleased with it, with the team and the ideas of what we want to see at Dealman Inn. And they did fund $350,000. I knew it was a long shot that we would get the entire amount. However, my philosophy is also that if we get some, that eventually they will fund the rest, because they're not going to make a commitment of $350,000 and then not do the whole thing. So then I had already written the second grant after we received the $350,000, and because of COVID-19 pushed everything back, we hadn't started the project. The state turned us down on the second phase. However, in the meantime, the project started moving, and I appreciate Gary and Mike working with me after the election to keep that project going. I brought it to their attention that the deadline was like June 7th or 8th, and the council meeting was that Wednesday, and it was due like the next day. So Mike had already updated everything, and I want to thank the council for approving that, and it has been approved to my knowledge. The second grant, so.
$350,000.
How much?
No, they were both $350,000.
So $700,000 for the project. So when that is done, then we'll take a look at the infrastructure, and I'm hoping to get a company, whether it's somebody like GMB that would be kind enough to do engineering on the infrastructure of what we need for electrical, plumbing, HVAC, that sort of thing, so that we can apply for other grants through the state. They do have infrastructure funding for that, so then we can hopefully get some tenants in there. So it's been a long process. I think we purchased it, signed papers January of 2012, if I remember correctly.
Sounds about right.
Yep. And we received a $450,000 grant to take care of the lead paint, and also 2 coats of paint on it. And then we didn't use all that money. It was about $220,000, I think, of that grant. And they allowed us to use another $100,000 to fix up the chimneys. I mean, one chimney in the back had a tree grown through it. That's how bad it was. So, and then they fixed all the downspout, the rain spout, painted the tin roof, and did a lot of other repairs, so that our justification using that $100,000 was if you don't do it, then the rain is going to damage everything that was done. So they allowed us to spend another $100,000 and some thousand, and we ended up turning $100,000 back. We wanted to do that. We wanted to use that for interior, whether there's lead paint or something inside, but then they considered that renovations, and they would not allow that. It had to be exterior. So that's where we are right now. There are interested parties in opening up either a microbrewery or a restaurant, a pub or something. But my hope is that, when we get it to the point where someone doesn't have to make a large investment, but is willing to make an investment, then we put it out kind of like a RSVP. Anyone that's interested, and whoever comes back with the best proposal, you know, the council will decide what to go forward. Yes?
Couple of questions. I'm not specifically representing the Heritage Committee, although something that we've talked about at a couple of meetings is possibly holding some fundraising events that would directly benefit the Dealman Inn. Not even necessarily right in town, but, you know, some kind of mixer or something. And we feel like if people know that we have a specific goal, they might, you know, might be more interested in doing that. The other thing is, a few of us in town are vendors at a nonprofit gift and thrift store in Union Bridge. And the money that we all pay for rent goes to the town. And one of the things that a few of us, Melissa Madison, Rebecca Price, and myself are vendors there, if, you know, it's future, but if something like that could be in the Dealman Inn, I mean, in one part of it, where, you know, we rent out the space, those of us that are interested pay rent, but it's a nonprofit that goes to the town. And Union Bridge does pretty well from, I mean, you know, that little store is really kind of busy, so, although that's, you know, future, but we're talking about it possibly.
And that's something that, you know, we could put in the RSVP that we highly recommended, you know, versus mandatory or something. But we've had, you know, so many different things, especially Bob Cairns, I still call him Robin, but who grew up there. He's had some great ideas of, you know, with the connection of Clifford Steele, you know, whether we could have a, you know, a room for artists, local artists to come in, you know, display items. So, I mean, there's so many potential things, and it's a 43 room, but it's really 42 usable rooms. But, you know, there's so many possibilities, and like I say, we could put that in the RSVP. And I've talked to Robin a couple times to come up and do a fundraiser of living in the Dealman. And I don't know if you are familiar with Robin, but he's written several books, and he is a storyteller, you know, of all storytellers. And he would be very interesting, and I think that would be a great fundraiser. So I got to get on the phone with him again. But I take that you're going to chair a fundraiser. Did I take it that way? No, you didn't hear my question.
We didn't make specific plans because it was before you came back, and we didn't want to step on anybody's toes.
Right.
But we did talk about doing something to raise money to go specifically for something at the Dealman Inn.
And if
when we have our next meeting, we'll talk about it.
That's great. And then what's the timeline on this project? You know,
Foundation?
Yeah.
It won't be done by Music on the Main.
It will not?
I told them to be done by.
Oh.
So they adjusted their schedule accordingly. That's the plan.
Okay. So, you know, possibly a wine and cheese fundraiser.
We're thinking of as Corby and Matt said, some kind of mixer with alcohol.
So, yeah, keep that in mind. Anything that will promote Dealman Inn, and if someone has an interested party out there that they know of that's looking for a place to expand, you know, I can see multiple businesses in there, you know. So I think it's, you know, one of those things, you know, I know it's corny, but you build it and they will come. And I think it, you know, it will be very unique to have a business there. So this is another step in the process, and once we get the infrastructure.
So a total of how much money, Mayor Roop, that has been received in grants? About
450,
and
7, and 40. We received $40,000 for a. It wasn't a feasibility study, but a study to show what could go in there. So we're looking at 1.1, almost 1.2 million.
And the in-kind donation of the, the architectural, animated architectural drawing, also drawings that Preservation Maryland did as well, which was probably worth quite a bit.
Well, Preservation Maryland sent a team of 3 women out one day, and they measured every door, every window, every room, and then did a 3D fly-through. I think it's on our website somewhere. It should be. That you can go and you see the rooms move and everything.
It's really cool.
I think it's on their website. If
I was
not,
just-
we'll have to put it on
I
there.
just made a note to myself to find that out. It's,
But bottom line, if something terrible, hopefully it doesn't, were to happen to Dealman Inn, everything has been measured so that we could return it to its, and then why I said 42 rooms when it's 43, they actually called me a couple of days after they left and said there's a window up on Main Street, up the very top, but they couldn't figure out what room it went to. So I went up onto the second floor.
Was it safe?
It wasn't OSHA approved how I got up there.
Here still.
Yeah, I made it back down. I had my phone. I knew how to call 911. But there was a little chair and then a little something I made into a ladder. And then there's a hole in the ceiling, and it's just dead space. But there's a window at the end. So that's the 43rd room. So you can't really use it, but just a little history about Dealman Inn. So, I still feel, and hopefully the council supports me on this, that this will be a destination spot sometime in hopefully the near future, to bring not only people into town, but additional businesses. And I really think, people that come to the Dealman Inn, hopefully, whatever the name is, if they come to eat and they have to wait a half hour, then they go to the shops, just like they did in Newmarket for many years. That's my vision. If you all have a different vision, I'm open to it. So I think we need a vision on it, and the more the merrier.
we need our own version of not a flood zone, but something like that
Right.
brings.
It would be
people
totally
to
different.
town. Exactly.
Yeah,
Brings
yeah.
people to New Windsor, so, yeah.
Go ahead.
Just to add that, we will start having bi-weekly progress meetings. Jeff, if you could push that back, I'm waiting to hear.
I appreciate that.
And then just a quick note on that something came up already. That you can see they started excavating on the Main Street side, and they're pulling up all the brick sidewalk over there. So the plans call for the existing brick paver sidewalk to be replaced with brick pavers with an alternate concrete sidewalk. There's 2 different details that Councilman Hall is pulling up here. I understand the history, appeal, and historical significance of the property, putting the brick pavers back. However, there are disadvantages to consider with the brick pavers. Structurally, they're not as sound for the building foundation, and long-term maintenance of the sidewalk or longevity of the sidewalk. They tend to look great when you put them in, and they're flat and level, but over time, things happen, they shift, they move, weeds start growing, things like that. You also have, they become, as we can see, some of the residents know, they become maintenance issues when you're shoveling snow or snow blowing snow and with weeds and things like that, tripping hazards. Concrete sidewalk will provide better structural integrity for the building foundation and be less maintenance issue, less of a maintenance issue in the long run. So as a compromise or an option to consider would be to go with a colored stamped concrete appearance, which I've reached out to Jeff Childs with Lewis Contractors about pricing for colored stamped concrete. So just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that, and while Jeff's looking at some prices.
I would say personally that we just go with regular concrete right now, because if streetscape comes through, they're probably going to tear everything up, because it's probably not going to be at the right height with the rest of the streetscape project.
On the Main Street side,
Yeah,
Yeah, in the Main
but you
Street side.
still, but it still may be
yeah.
off one way or the other.
That's a good point. I don't see, it's yet to be determined with streetscape what level they're gonna get into on the paving. I don't see there being grade line changes.
But one time, there was like 2 levels there. I don't know where we are now with that, but,
I mean, the intersection, you see the intersection is definitely higher,
right.
you know, but that's years of overlay, basically.
Yeah.
Through there. Anyway, the question came up, the plans, like I say, call for brick to go back.
Right.
But there's an alternate detail for concrete.
And there was also in the streetscape originally for all brick from right here all the way up. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's something that came up and that I wanted to get your thoughts on.
Well, Gary, on that Main Street side, how wide that sidewalk is, they're still going to replace it all the way from the building to the...
It's the same width for the most part within.
Yeah, I would not want to see that being concrete.
Yeah.
Just a big concrete slab.
I agree.
That, a historical building,
That's almost 8 feet wide.
yeah, a historical building that we're trying to restore, throwing a concrete slab there.
Right.
I would acquiesce to stamped concrete that looked like it, because I do understand the maintenance issues, although all good things are worth having some maintenance, but I could go with the stamped concrete, but I would not just want to, cement that.
Yeah, I
and
would
hopefully,
agree with that.
eventually, it's not the town's maintenance responsibility.
Right.
I understand that, right?
But I would agree with what Councilman Hoffman is saying, because, some of my neighbors and stuff have pavers in front of their house now, and we want all the sidewalks to match eventually, and if they are at the right height and they're just a concrete slab, it's not gonna look very nice. Like you're saying, we want that, we want it to have a nice look for the town, because this is a historic town. We want it to look that way, so I'm thinking, go with the stamping. I think that's a great idea, and I know that the cement is tinted on that as well, so it gives it the look of brick. And I've seen it in Union Bridge. They did a fabulous job there, and it looks really nice, so.
I've directed Jeff to basically try to match the color in terms of the existing with the stamped concrete.
I would just add one thing, and they're probably not gonna do this anyways, but don't throw the bricks away.
Right.
Because we could possibly use them when the garden gets redone, or the new owner could, or we could sell them as a fundraiser or something. I would just say, in fact, there were some really big, what they call blue stones. I don't know if those didn't get thrown away already, those should be saved, because they're actually valuable when people do historic landscaping. So I
They
would just
are. We paid
save all
extra
that
money
stuff.
to
Yeah.
get old brick when we were doing things in our house,
just
so
Put it
they're
in a
more
nice pile
expensive.
someplace.
So, I will just add, though, that the benefits to concrete are, there is quite a few benefits to concrete, especially for me personally, with strollers. I guess wheelchairs would be the same, it gets bumpy, and it will regardless. After 20, 30 years, it's going to get bumpy.
Won't take that long, unfortunately.
But for the stamped concrete, I'm not opposed to that. It's just the color, I think we'll have to discuss, because at some point around that building, it's going to change. It's going to change back to the regular concrete. So, I mean, how that looks of going from just straight concrete to then a design and then back to straight concrete on the other side.
That's a good point. Wayne and I were talking about, we've already removed a portion of sidewalk, a concrete sidewalk that was very badly displaced there, to be able to get in to remove the stumps in there so we could do work. Now that's on that's outside the limits. It's within Dealman property, but it's
Right.
outside the limits of the foundation restoration. And then you can see there's a little bit left of concrete here, but that grade could be lowered and probably meet ADA requirements from the beginning of the spore line here, all and tie into what they finish as part of Dealman. So I would, again, agree with continuing that pattern, whether it be actual brick or stamp colored concrete down through here, and making that a little more handicap accessible route there. And along the terms, real quick before I forget, I want to thank Ichabod's Tree Service. They were in town doing some other work or getting ready to mobilize, I can't remember which, but they came out and took 3 of those stumps out on outside of the limits and did not charge the town for that. It was about an hour and a half. Wow. It wasn't a lot, but that's the kind of guy that they are, the kind of guys that they are. And Chris Partenza, the owner, is very, very interested in and always willing to help out the town whenever possible. So I want to thank them for doing that part as well. So.
Thank you. Any other old business? Residents' concerns?
One.
I think there was one person.
I'm sorry.
State your name and address, please, sir.
Dave Johnson, 2814 Union Square. Welcome back, by the way.
Thank you.
This is a very minor thing in the grand scheme of things, but yeah, all this talk about parks, and I've brought this up before. All this money that's going to all these parks. Alley Ridge Park, nothing gets done at Alley Ridge Park. There's a professional disc golf course built there. There's a skate park there. Nothing gets done there. It gets mowed maybe, and I understand that this is short staff and all that, but the grass got this high and got mowed, but now it's this high with, I mean, how many ticks are in there? I mean, I'd like to go use it. I think I may be the only one in town that does use it.
What, the golf?
Yeah.
No. The one neighbor there that wanted it, he uses it.
I've never seen, I've been here for 5 years, and I use it in the summer. I use it on a fairly regular basis, or at least I try to. But again, the maintenance is such that I don't like to use it a lot. I don't use it as much as I would like. With all this money that's being given to all the other parks, plus there's 2 ball fields that are in total disrepair. I'm just wondering why isn't there any, there doesn't appear to be any effort being given to that park.
Well, the ball fields are probably not a high priority due to the fact that the 2 at Sybils are not being used at this time, are they? Just the Lions Club. Now, Paul wanted to use the fields, but I don't know where we are with him.
That agreement's been
Going.
nullified. When there was an agreement that we went into, it never transpired because then they got use of the Lions. As the only thing I hear your point, Dave, about the funding from the POS. What I will say in terms of the Frisbee golf, and in talking with Director Myers, and he can correct me, and maybe Neil remembers this as well, or one of the other council members might remember this. The gentleman that wanted the golf course in, there was some kind, at least of a verbal agreement or discussion early on about, before it went in, about him maintaining it. And the issue with the town maintaining that, which Councilman Huffman pointed out, is that's a floodplain, and it lies wet almost all the time.
Yeah.
So the guys, as much as they would like to mow it more frequently, are not going to mow the whole area because it's a natural area for most of it. They try to mow it when they can, but it is restricted to how wet it lies. The water level in there is extremely high. They try to get back at least along a swath each side of the path to get back in and out there. But I don't know if you recall anything, or anybody in the council recall anything about the golf course?
Lehigh paid for everything, all the holes or the baskets.
Yeah.
They paid for all them. I think the guy put most of them up, but I can't remember.
That sounds right.
And we've always had an issue with it being wet. You know, it's not the ideal place. However, all this money that goes from like program open space is not for maintenance. It's not for labor. It's for actual capital construction. So, but the key is being able to mow when it's decent.
Well, you know, I walk that park almost every day, and I can tell you that.
I doubt that you're not walking the skateboard side. You're walking the other side. You're walking where the walking paths are.
Right, I am on the
walking. About the other side.
Oh, the other. Well, when we had our meeting with Mr. Myers, he was talking about possibly moving the skate park from that floodplain area to over near where the tennis courts are, and making that into a bigger park area over there, and saving the skate park, because it's not in a great area down there as far as the kids using it, and there's no lighting and that sort of thing. So we were trying to think about a way to move that, and especially because of the floodplain there. But I also know about, right now, Ichabod's is down at the walking path, and they're removing all the trees. Well, I haven't been able to walk there the last 2 days because they're down there working. And the the gardens at the end of the walking path have all just been cleaned up, and they're looking pretty good down there. And I know that people play on that disc golf course because I see them down there.
On the other side, right?
Yeah.
I like to use it. I've used both sides, but I like the other side because it's more open.
Right.
I'm sure a couple of frisbee golf holes are on the skate park side.
Right.
They're on that.
I think it's kind of half and half.
Half and half.
I think that,
Not quite, but yeah.
8 holes on, or 8 holes on one side, 8 on the other.
Yeah.
And possibly we could take a look at, I'm not going to make any promises or anything, but we could take a look at possibly moving it down to the new park. We have the equipment there. Well, not, that would take up too much.
Frisbee golf?
Yeah.
I think it would be a better location.
Huh?
I think it would be a better location.
And whether we have that many baskets or just half, but make them more competitive or something.
I mean, if you go online and look for disc golf courses, this one does come up.
Yeah.
And there have been a couple of times when I've seen people come in that obviously are, they're not professionals, but they're into disc golf, and they come from, out of town.
Yeah.
To use it, so.
All right.
And I think all of those parks that we talked about earlier were all Project Open Space money, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and the way that works is you're not eligible for that funding every year, so what is it?
We're not this year,
Right.
we'll be eligible again next year.
So we actually had a little discussion in email a couple of months ago about some of the things that we want to talk about for next year, so thank you. We'll keep that,
Moving the park, the skate park, I think is a good idea to get it out of that location. The fencing is one thing that I honestly think that right now can come down. The fencing was put up, in talking to Wayne, to be able to shut it down and lock it down at night, which we're not doing. And they'll go underneath, over top, whatever. So that's one thing. I went out and measured, actually while Wayne was off last week, I went out and measured the dimensions of it. It's basically 60 by 80, give or take, a foot or two. Where we had talked about putting it adjacent basically to the basketball court, the problem with that, with those existing dimensions, is grading's not so much of a problem, but we've also learned of a pretty precise location of the force main from the Atlee Ridge pump station, which is staked now, runs up through there. And we don't want to put the skate park over the force main.
Right.
And so it really didn't fit very well in any dimension abutting it to the basketball court. Now, I'm not saying there's room to put it somewhere, but that current location where we were thinking might not work with the current dimensions that we have, unless we changed the configuration and made it like kind of an odd shape, which.
The fence was put up mainly to keep bicycles out. Because we didn't want, at that time, bicycles going in there. We wanted to just keep it a skate park.
Right. Well, the gate has not been locked for.
I don't think it was really ever to keep people out, but.
Yeah. So, anyway.
All right. Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. So going forward, I think, we start concentrating more on developing the park down where the lagoon was. So, any other comments, concerns, announcements? Next week, 9th, 10th, and 11th at the Carnival Grounds, 101 High Street, 5 to whatever, for great food, raffles, that sort of thing. The Lions Club will be giving away $100 gas card for whoever buys the fall harvest tickets during Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So someone that buys a ticket will go into a drawing for a $100 gas card. So, and lunch Thursday and Friday, 11 to 1, great food. And again, come out and support the fire company, the Lions Club, and get to see people you haven't seen for a year. So, anybody have any other announcements? Do I hear a motion for adjournment?
Make that motion.
A second.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So carried. Thank you, everyone. She has it.